Hey everyone, I'm Bhavesh. I'm a research professor at the California Medical Innovations Institute in San Diego. I'm really sad to not be there in person this year, but I'm really excited to introduce, on behalf of all the members, the Actionable Guidelines for Fair Research Software Task Force. And,
That's right.
and I'll start with some background. And as you may know, the FAIR principles were introduced to make all research outcomes findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And since their publication in 2016, they have been widely adopted across fields of research and by all stakeholders, including researchers, funders, and scientific publishers. And although they were developed for all research outcomes, many in the research software community felt that they were mostly designed to make data fair. And so they established what they call the FAIR principle for research software, which are a more tailored version of the FAIR principle for research software. But being principled, they are by design very high level. They suggest, for instance, that software is assigned a globally unique and persistent identifier, but they don't tell you which identifier and how to obtain one, and so on. And so this is why me and a few colleagues developed what we call the FAIR Biomedical Research Software Guideline or FAIR BioRS Guideline, which are kind of step-by-step actionable instructions to comply with these FAIR for RS principles. And I'm listing a few of the steps here. And there was a huge contribution to this effort from the BOSC community as the guidelines were presented at BOSC 2022, 2023, and also discussed during the CoFest. And one limitation of these guidelines is that they were developed only through inputs from the biomedical research community, so they cannot be generalized as is. Although the 2-year survey of the FAIR for RS principle showed that there is a need for such generalized guidelines to make any research software uh, fair. And so this is why I initiated what I call the Actionable Fair for RS Task Force in December last year under the Research Software Alliance, which is a global alliance of stakeholders in research software. And the goal of the task force is, like I mentioned, to establish actionable guidelines to help make any research software fair in line with the FAIR for RS principles. And yeah, we're kind of having new challenges in this effort compared to the Fair BioRS effort, including how to develop domain agnostic guidelines since we want to make any software fair, how to address open versus closed source software since fair in principle is supposed to apply to both, and also how to keep up with evolving standards. And we currently have about 12 active members who are working through these challenges and towards our goal. They come from various geographical locations, various research domains, and we could certainly use more help. So if you're interested in joining, please email me. We are having a blast here. And the first fun thing we did is we studied the 17 principles in depth and kind of managed to categorize them across 6 categories of the requirement they had, which include identifier, metadata for software publication and discovery, standard inputs, outputs, qualified reference, metadata for software reuse and license. And for each of them, we had many questions, like I mentioned, what identifier to use, how to get one, and so on. And so we have now split into 6 subgroups, each working towards the question of these 6 categories. And we are hoping we'll done with this by the end of the summer and then come back together to write and release a first draft of the guidelines for community feedback by the end of the year before we publish the first version early next year. And with that, I'd like to thank all of you for listening. And again, if you're interested in joining or want to learn more, please email me. Thank you.